Hello, 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 and welcome to today's episode of Her Version. This podcast is dedicated to sharing stories of struggle to triumph, a platform that allows individuals to tell their truth in order to inspire and uplift others. I am your host, Sabrina Victoria. If you are new to this podcast, make sure you follow, like, subscribe, and share. Let's jump right in. Thank you for joining us today for this episode of Her Version. I have an amazing guest speaker with us today, Emily. Emily is a warrior who is here to talk about her loss, her community, and her ability to keep getting up. We are talking about how the loss of a child can change the trajectory of your entire life, how to get up and find yourself again. Welcome, Emily.
Thanks, Sabrina.
How are you? Here. Oh, thank you for taking some time out of your day to sit down with me. I appreciate you for doing that, and especially on such a subject. So thank you.
Yeah.
How has your week been?
It's been a good week. I live in Montana, and it's been really hot and smoky, but otherwise a great week. And we had our support group meeting this week, which I'll talk a little bit more about later, but it's been good so far.
Awesome. So the smoke is from?
Just all the forest fires in the West.
Mm-hmm. Insane.
Yeah.
Does it ever clear? Are there ever like clear days, or it's just a constant?
The end of August, we had some rain and cooler weather that came through and cleared it out. So there was about a week and a half where you could see blue sky. And now it's like apocalyptic. It's like a yellow color out, and the sun is kind of dull. And well, the sun itself, when it sets and rises, is like a bright pink color because of all the smoke, just all the smoke in the air.
So, wow.
Yeah.
So interesting. Does it smell? Can you actually smell like the...
Yeah, the air quality today, I think, is orange, which is unhealthy for most groups. Yeah, so and you can smell the smoke in the air.
Crazy. I feel like that's a little bit of ways, and it's still, I can't even imagine what it must be like living closer to that. Unimaginable.
It's continuing to get worse every year, but...
How long has this fire been going on? I feel like it's been going on for a long time.
I mean, the whole West has had, Montana has had fires all over the state, but it's the whole Northwest and really up and down the coast, California and Southwest have had fires since June. So we've had smoke since June, which is very unprecedented for us.
Yeah. So. No kidding. Well, I'm glad that you are here. I'm glad that you are healthy and spending some time with us today. So I kind of want to talk about, well, first of all, I want to talk about this group that you were just kind of mentioning. I think that would be a nice segue into, the topic that we're talking about. Yeah. So if you don't mind kind of telling us what that is and how you came about with that.
Yeah, so in 2016, we lost our first child. And while I was in the hospital giving birth to him, the hospital staff was really wonderful at sending in mental health professionals just to check on me and my family pretty consistently throughout our stay. And something they kept offering was a support group. We were in a different town, however. So we live in Helena, Montana, and I was giving birth to our son in Missoula, which is an hour and a half-ish away. So it wasn't a support group that I could really access once I left the hospital and, came back home. So when I got back to Helena, I desperately started seeking a support group. And I looked around pretty diligently And there was no child loss support group. There were a lot of support groups that generally looked at grief and loss, but I really wanted to talk with other parents that had lost a child. I wanted to like actually sit in that space with people.
Wow.
Um, so I got introduced to another woman who had lost her son as well about a month before we lost our son. Different circumstances, but we had both lost we both lost children. And we just decided, let's start a support group and run it together, a peer led support group. We found a place in town, a yoga studio that was willing to let us use their space for free. And we started a Facebook group, or Facebook business page, I guess, and just put it out there. And the first group we had 10 or 11 people. This was in 2017, March of 2017 was when we started it. We had 10 or 11 people come, and it was the whole spectrum. We had a woman in her 70s who had just walked through the death of her 50-year-old daughter. We had people that had lost children 10, 12, 15 years ago. We had people that had recently lost children. And all the forms of loss, like all the circumstances, were different. But what's very striking, even from that first gathering, was that grief itself from losing a child was all pretty similar after the fact of losing them, and the circumstances of loss didn't really matter in regard to the fact that grief was still there, and it was still hard to live your life without your child and all of those pieces. So we meet monthly, and during COVID, for a good portion of the time, we were meeting virtually instead of in person, but we are back to in person currently. And it is such a sacred space for a really terrible reason to be together. But it's a community. I mean, obviously it's a community of support, but we have all become really close because when you have an experience like this, you can't help but really share the most raw parts of yourself and your stories.
Of course, of course. Were
Yeah.
you are you the type of person that would normally do that, like form a group? Oh, you are.
Yeah.
Wow. So it was almost put in your path on purpose. When they
Yeah, I mean,
say,
it felt natural for me to just be like, oh, well, there's not a group. Well, of course, I'm just going to start one. Like,
wow,
that was a really natural thing. And so it just really, I mean, it took off really well.
wow.
Yeah.
And I don't, you know where you are in your healing process, but when they say, life happens for you, not to you, I feel like that is very much something to look at with your circumstance, because here you are providing a platform for so many other people that didn't have that same drive to create what you've created for them. So that's great.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. I definitely, one phrase. So what you just said made me think of this one phrase that was really difficult for me and continues to be, and something we talk about a lot in support group, is a lot of times when you have loss of any kind, but especially a child, people will say things like everything happens for a reason or God has a plan, which are kind of like nails on a chalkboard to me. And I've really done a lot of intentional work around what does that mean, and what is, if there is a God, why would you purposefully lose a child? And from my perspective, and what I like to share with people now, is I don't believe that these things happen for a reason. I think that there can be purpose found after the fact. So for me, losing our son was not something that, in my perspective, God planned for us. It was a part of development and our human experience. And for me, it's more about the fact that I have been able to take great pain and loss and turn it into something that allows me to connect with people so that they know they aren't alone. And it's also been something that's helped me survive through the process itself of loss. I mean, it is kind of selfish, part of it was for me. I mean, the main reason was for me. And then to know that so many people have benefited has been just a huge gift,
Yeah.
and continues to be, because pretty frequently we have new mothers or fathers coming to support group, and we have a safe space for them.
100%.